South Africans seem to be slowly losing faith in the country's democracy. Growing frustration with poor governance, corruption and weak service delivery seems to be fueling disillusionment amongst our citizenry. A recent survey has been conducted by Afrobarometer, which shows a decline in public trust in democratic institutions, and more people seem to be questioning whether the system still serves their needs. Let's talk to the authors of the survey, Preston Govindasamy, the project manager for Southern Africa at Afrobarometer. Preston, good morning to you and welcome to the program. I know we're both smiling because we're being polite South Africans, but there's a lot to wipe the smiles off our faces in terms of the findings of your survey. And we'll get to the detail of it in just a moment. We'll talk about affinity for democracy and perhaps a growing disillusionment that leads people to think, well, maybe a military regime might be a better alternative to what we have now. But it's important for our viewers to always understand how the survey was conducted. And so one of the important questions is, what was the primary research question or objective of your survey? We'll bring the findings back up in just a moment, but let's just set the scene with that question.
Sure. Good morning, Iman, and thank you for having me. Good morning also to your viewers. Thank you for prefacing, I think, with the context of the survey. Afrobarometer surveys are the only Pan-African network and surveys to sort of track democracy, governance, social cohesion, and service delivery across more than 40 countries on the continent. We've been tracking this since 1999 using all nationally representative surveys, and our primary mode of data collection is still face-to-face surveys, which is the gold standard on the continent. We conducted the survey in South Africa, around 10 of our surveys in South Africa, between June and July 2025. And we use a sample size of 1,600 respondents, covering the length and breadth of the country. And just some statistics giving us a sampling area of plus minus 2.5 percentage points at a 95% level of confidence. So it is well within the parameters of accepted research, especially in the academic space.
So let's go then to some of the findings, and you'll see in the morning press a number of them have made headlines, because it's almost chilling for us as South Africans who celebrated democracy at a very, very high cost, for people to begin to express sentiments. And it will also be interesting in your answer to say whether these questions around this particular line of inquiry were open-ended or not. But one of the striking findings is that over half of Africans in general say a military takeover might be justified if the leaders abuse power. But fewer than half of South Africans actively supporting democracy for the first time in over 25 years, more citizens saying that they would accept military rule rather than oppose it. Share with us the numbers, and we'll put that slide back up for our viewers to see.
Yeah, I think the concern is chilling, and these findings are quite a stark reminder of I would suggest the lessening patience of the South African public. But just to contextualize that figure for you, I think it's really important that we don't understand just the numbers in isolation, but the convergence of other data points and other numbers sort of provide a holistic picture. So just to sort of preface that, while that finding is alarming, we still find that about 6 in 10 citizens in South Africa support elections as the best way to choose their leader. Right, and they say many political parties are needed so that South Africans have real choices to govern them. We also find that nearly 2/3 of South Africans say that citizens should be able to join any political organization they want, and more than 7 in 10 say that the media should be free to publish any views without government control. So there's this stark contrast between this finding of growing support for military rule over democracy and these other findings that show that indicators or sort of characteristics of democracy are valued in our society. I think maybe the salient point here is to say that South Africans may be growing tired with how democracy actually plays out at a grassroots level. and perhaps that is why we finding an increase in sentiment and support for perhaps alternate methods of governance.
I mean, it's so interesting because if you think about the health of a nation, the three things that you've just shared with us, and those numbers I'll repeat: 6 in 10 support elections. 2/3 of citizens say we should be free to join whatever political party we want. 7 in 10 say media freedom is sacrosanct, effectively, or it should be promoted. I mean, these are healthy indicators for a democracy. So I'm curious as to how the military question came about. Was it a subset? I mean, and how did that come in?
Yeah, so we use a variety of indicators to sort of track support and demand for democracy, and one of the questions we ask within this construct is: there are many ways to govern a country. Would you disapprove or approve of the following alternatives? And then the sub-question: the army comes in to govern the country, and this we've been tracking since 1999. In 2011, say for instance, 69% of the country rejected military rule. But we see now in these findings that there's a sort of a cross-section and a crossroads in these findings where an increasingly amount of citizens feel that alternative forms to democracy are preferred. Maybe to also contextualize this, we ask questions on service delivery and satisfaction with in government institutions, as well as trust in government institutions. Among the highest cited major problems in our country was that 96% of South Africans said job creation is a major problem in our country, followed by infrastructure, and I think among the top 5 were corruption. No surprise there. And so I think it's this growing dissatisfaction with how democracy actually plays out in a grassroots level. If you had to think about the amount of matriculants writing matric now that will either go into some form of work or some form of studying next year, but a significant proportion of them would be left without work. It really goes to show that a significant cohort of South Africans are growingly dissatisfied with how our leaders are implementing democracy in our country. We don't have to look too far from our distant neighbors in Kenya and Madagascar to see some of the consequences when civic action is on the rise. Yeah,
Nepal as well, which we saw recently. These are the blinking lights that are going off, the red lights that are saying to the government and really all of us of things that we need to be concerned about and things that could be a potential in the future. I mean, I'm interested in your reaction to the prominence that this particular thread in your research has now been given. I mean, that pretty much is the headline that everyone's talking about, that South Africans, fewer South Africans are backing democracy and the support for military rule is rising. Were you surprised that was a prominent take from the South African perspective? And given that it was, I mean, how concerning is that?
Yeah, I think it wasn't too much of a surprise for us at Afrobarometer in South Africa, especially since we tracking this from 1999, right? And we're seeing a sharp increase from 2021, in fact, to get us to this point. I think it's really showing us that there's growing concern and restlessness. And if you would notice this tracking change from 2021 all the way to 2025, there's various things that have occurred in our country, such as the looting in July of 2022, etc. That are, I would say, stark indicators and some litmus test for what the general sentiment in the country is.
And a potential inflection point as well, which is why I would like for you, in closing, Preston, to lay, and look, we can't compare it like for like, but to lay a country like Burkina Faso in the Sahel, and we've seen a lot of change and coups d'etat happening in that particular region with their neighbors as well. And when you think about the moment that led up to, the moment that preceded that inflection point, and then comparing South Africa, as you say, you know, July 2021 is probably an example of how quickly things can go wrong and how the contagion effect can take root. What resonance do you see between both of those? Are we in the 10-year before moment as compared to Burkina Faso, potentially? I mean, I know that might sound alarmist.
Yeah, that is quite an alarmist question, but I think I think the alert is not sounding at red at the moment, but I think it is an amber alert, Iman, for our leaders to consider, you know, the opinion and the sentiment of the public in running our country. We see, you know, the GNU has just been implemented, but we also see a lot of backlogs, a lot of stalemates, a lot of sort of untouched grassroots implementation. You know, even with the GNU, it'll become more stark and more real next year when we get into a local election, where we have more stalemates and more impasses and more bottlenecks, where sort of local parties, you know, fight for seats. And so I think it's what may be happening at the top in terms of, you know, our judiciary and governance at a high level, which may seem healthy. I think those effects are not trickled down to ordinary South Africans. And I think that's where they're feeling the pinch and the pain right now.
And I'm going to bring that question up for our viewers again in a moment. There was a poll, Preston, but as you say, it's an amber alert, and there it is. Do you still trust? And maybe, Preston, while you're still here, I don't know if you could choose one of the options. Do you still trust South Africa's democratic institutions? It was a yes, no, trust is broken, or yes or no, or partially. What would you have said?
I would say institutions are the majority of institutions are still strong, like we're seeing in the judiciary, for instance. I think it's implementation that's lacking. If we start to look at a ward councillor level, you know, at a local level, at a job creation level, I think that's where sort of the wheels are coming off, and I think that's where South Africans are feeling the major pinch, and that's where their sentiment is actually rooted in. Yeah.
And it all boils down to leadership. They must lead, and they must do the things they've been hired to do. Preston Govindasamy, thank you for talking to us and sharing with us the results of this latest survey, project manager for Southern Africa at Barometer.